Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back. Thank you so much for clicking on the video. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the top 3 best intelligence builds in Elden Ring. I'm going to be showing you the most efficient ways to use some of the best weapons, talismans, and spells in the game. Quick shout out to our sponsor, AOE.com. If you don't have time to grind for items or runes and you want items real quick, use my code COLD for 3% off. Intelligence builds are very strong, and the best part about it, there's so many different ways to make it. Now, I've made a handful of intelligence builds in Elden Ring, but I've come to the conclusion that these are the top 3 best intelligence builds to use. Now, obviously, the one thing all of these builds have in common is they focus on intelligence, but what differentiates them is their playstyles. I really feel like you guys are going to enjoy this video because I seriously believe that there's a playstyle for everybody here. I hope you're all ready, because these are the top 3 best intelligence builds in Elden Ring.
Well then, shall we?
The first build we are going to look at is the Blind Monk Intelligence build. This build is going to be perfect for anybody that wants to prioritize survivability. I had so much fun using this build because it made me feel unstoppable. The Scholar's Shield spell that we are using on our fingerprint shield that you see in the gameplay here is extremely overpowered, and it's going to make you unkillable. Once you combine that with some of the amazing weapons that we are using on this build, including the Death Poker and the Clayman's Harpoon, it's going to make you extremely deadly and very, very efficient. If you're looking for extremely high survivability against every single enemy in this game, and you also want to do tons of damage with your spells and magic weapons, the Blind Monk Intelligence build is going to be perfect for you. Now, if you just recently started the game, obviously your attribute points are not going to be very high, but I want to make sure I point you guys in the right direction. Primarily, you want to focus on vigor. Endurance is going to be extremely important because you are going to have a pretty heavy equipment load as you get closer and closer to endgame. Also have to focus on strength as well. Strength is going to be very important because it's going to determine which shields we can actually equip in the game. And last but not least here, we have intelligence, which is the 4th primary attribute that we are focusing on, as you can see here. As you get closer to level 100 and you get to endgame, vigor is going to become very important. So you have to make sure you prioritize this attribute as much as you possibly can. Keep in mind, you have to make some room for mind, endurance. Strength, like I said, is going to be very important because strength is going to allow us to equip the fingerprint shield that you saw in the gameplay footage. At level 150, which is typically where most people like to stop leveling up their characters, your attributes could look something like this. The same principles are going to apply. You want to make sure you prioritize vigor as much as you possibly can. Make some room for mind. Endurance is very important on this build. You want to also increase your equipment load as much as you possibly can. You want to make sure you reach 48 strength to utilize the best shield in the game, and then we have intelligence at 40. I chose to stop leveling up my character at 250. I believe I'm on New Game plus 9 at the moment, but if you look below, my attribute points at 250 resemble everything that we just spoke about, right? Vigor at 60, mind 38, endurance extremely high, strength at 50, and one of the great things about being such a high level, you can stack a lot of attribute points into one specific attribute. And as you can see here, our choice was intelligence. So I actually used 3 melee weapons on this build, which is why equipment load is extremely important. Now, the first weapon I highly recommend using is the Death Poker. This weapon scales evenly with both strength and dexterity, also scaling with intelligence, making this a great option for this build. One of my favorite things about this weapon is the Ash of War Ghost Flame Ignition, extremely powerful, but we also have that additional 65 frost buildup. The Ghost Flame Ignition Ash of War does damage over time for a brief moment, but in that moment you are going to stack a lot of damage. In addition to that, this weapon has a secondary attack, a heavy attack that's going to destroy everything. Another weapon I highly recommend checking out is the Clayman's Harpoon. This weapon scales evenly with both strength and intelligence, which is perfect because those are attributes that we are prioritizing on this build. The Bloodhound Step Ash of War, along with the Cold Affinity, allowing us to obtain 104 frost buildup is going to make this weapon really good. But what actually makes this weapon such a great option for this build in particular is the fact that you can actually attack your opponent and defend yourself simultaneously. This weapon is really good. I highly recommend it, and it's actually really easy to obtain. Head over to the Mistwood Ruins and you will see this well right here. Once you reach the bottom, you will find a site of grace as well as a new area to explore. You will eventually run into these enemies right here. As you can see, they are all wielding the Clayman's harpoon. You basically just have to kill these guys and, you know, cross your fingers and hope they drop it. Another really good weapon is the Falling Star Beastjaw. What makes this weapon so good is the Gravity Bolt Ash of War. This skill does a lot of damage, but the most important thing, it's going to completely destroy your enemy's poise. Our glintstone staff of choice is going to be the Carrion Regal Scepter, which has incredible intelligence scaling. All of our defense is coming directly from the Fingerprint Stone Shield and a spell that we are using on this build called the Scholar's Shield. For the apparel, I'm using the Heroda's Glintstone Crown, the Sorcerer Robe, the Blood-Soaked hand wraps, and the Battle Mage leg wraps. For the talismans, I highly recommend starting with the Shard of Alexander, which is going to greatly boost the attack power of skills. We also have the Old Lord's Talisman, which is going to extend spell effect duration. This works extremely well with the Scholar's Shield spell. It's pretty much going to make the Fingerprint Stone Shield invincible. I'm also using the Curved Sword Talisman, which enhances guard counters. And last but not least, we have the Green Turtle Talisman, which raises stamina recovery speed. I'm about to show you guys some of the best spells that you can use on this build, starting with the Scholar's Shield spell that we have literally been talking about for this entire video. This is easily one of the best spells in the game. It's going to make your shield completely immune to damage, and the most important thing, it's going to make you unkillable. Terra Magica is also a really good spell to use. As long as you stay in the sphere below, your magic damage is going to be increased by 35%. Pair that with the Carrion Phalanx for more defense for yourself, and the Night Comet. This combination is incredible, and trust me, you are going to be doing lots of damage. You're going to have that defense there as well. I also thought it was a great idea to include Adula's Moonblade. This spell is incredible. It does a lot of damage, and you also get that frost buildup. For my Wondrous Physic, I'm using the Stone Barb Cracked Tier and the Cerulean Hidden Tier. The Stone Barb is great because it's going to make our stance break easier, and it works incredible on weapons like the Falling Star Beastjaw. The Cerulean Hidden Tier is also great to have in situations whenever you need to completely eliminate all FP consumption. The next intelligence build we're going to take a look at is the Magic Swordsman build. I just want to tell you guys this build is a lot of fun to use, and it definitely deserves a spot in our top 3 intelligence build list. This build is definitely a more aggressive playstyle, but it's very rewarding. The Magic Swordsman is proficient with bladed weapons, which is why we are taking full advantage of the MOONVEIL Katana. Dual wielding 2 katanas on the build with extremely deadly combo attacks and transient moonlight from our MOONVEIL Katana. Easily one of the strongest Ashes of War for an intelligence build. The Swordsman's Glintstone Staff of choice is the Carrion Glintstone Staff, which gives us a boost to our Carrion Sword sorceries. This is going to make spells like the Carrion Piercer, the Carrion Greatsword, and the Carrion Slicer do more damage. If you just started the game recently and you're somewhere around level 50, your attribute points could look something like this. For Vigor, we have 25. Obviously, HP is going to be extremely important in a game like this. Mind, 15. Endurance, you don't have to worry about because our equipment load is always going to be light. Strength at 12. Dexterity, one of our main attributes, at 20. And intelligence at 30. As you move closer to level 100, you're going to be focusing on the same attributes, right? We have vigor, dexterity, and intelligence as our top 3 primary attributes. Mind is going to be extremely important as well, so make sure you increase this over time. The more focus points you have, the more spells you can cast. Also, keep in mind, dexterity is not only going to increase our melee damage, which is important on this build, but it also increases our spell casting speed. At level 150, which is where most people like to stop leveling up their characters for PvP purposes, Vigor would be at 60. Obviously, you want to reach the soft cap of Vigor. Make sure you get as much HP as possible, and I think 1900 is a great spot to be at. We increased our mind to 30, Dexterity to 40, and Intelligence at 60. You can see here I am currently level 250, and my attribute points follow the same principles. Vigor at 60, increase mind to 38, because at 38, a fully maxed out FP flask will completely replenish your focus bar. Dexterity extremely high in this build at 75, lots of raw melee damage, and Intelligence fully maxed out. In our right hand, we have the MOONVEIL Katana and the Wing of Astal, easily the best intelligence weapons in the game. In my personal opinion, I believe the MOONVEIL Katana is the best magic sword in the game. Obviously, you have other options, but nothing compares to the transient Moonlight Ash of War that's exclusive to this magic weapon. Some may argue that the Wing of Astal is a superior weapon, but in my opinion, I think both are fantastic. With the Wing of Astal, you have very fast, high damage melee attacks, but also keep in mind the Nebula Ash of War does tons of damage, and it's very easy to spam. You definitely want to take full advantage of the high dexterity you have on this build by utilizing dual wielding Uji Katanas. Katanas specifically, we have the MOONVEIL and the regular Uji Katana scaled with the Keen Affinity. Choosing the Keen Affinity with your Ash of War that you decide to go with on your Uji Katana is going to be extremely important because it's going to raise your physical attack power. You can see here this Uji Katana has 258 plus 328 physical attack power. We have A tier dexterity scaling along with that additional blood loss buildup. The katanas in Elden Ring are extremely satisfying to use. Lots of great movesets. One of my personal favorite is the running attack followed by the double slash. I really enjoy using these weapons. They are perfect for dexterity builds. As I mentioned earlier, we are using the Carrion Glintstone Staff fully maxed out plus 25. The reason you want to use this staff in particular, it has incredible S tier intelligence attribute scaling, but it also gives us that passive effect, which is going to boost our Carrion Sword sorceries. For the apparel, I made this outfit. I put this together. I think it looks pretty cool. I'm using the Alberic's robe altered. You can alter certain armor pieces at the site of grace. Millennia's gauntlets look so cool on this build, especially wielding the MOONVEIL Katana. And then for the greaves, I have the Page trousers. For the talismans, we have the Shard of Alexander, which is going to greatly boost the attack power of skills. This is going to be great for our transient moonlight skill on our MOONVEIL Katana. I'm also using the Graven School Talisman. There's also a better version of this talisman called the Mass Graven School Talisman, which I don't have yet, but overall, this is a great talisman to have on your build because it raises the potency of your magic attacks. We also have the Rotten Winged Sword Insignia. This is great when we are dual wielding our katanas. This is going to greatly raise our attack power with each successive attack. And last but not least, just a great overall talisman to have on every build, the Green Turtle Talisman, which is going to raise our stamina recovery speed. Taking a quick look at the spells we are using on this build, starting with the Carrion Phalanx. This spell is great for defense, and it also does damage to your target if they get close enough. This works incredibly well with the transient moonlight skill on the MOONVEIL Katana. We also have the Carrion Slicer ability, which is a sword, very fast attacks, pretty decent damage, lots of stagger. We also have the Carrion Greatsword, one of my personal favorite. Keep in mind, all of these Carrion Sword spells are benefiting from the Carrion Glintstone Staff, which raises the potency of these spells. Adula's Moonblade is also really good. It's basically an upgraded version of the Carrion Greatsword. In addition to the high amounts of damage that you can do with this spell, you also get frost buildup. And last but not least, your main range spell is going to be the Night Comet. The reason I like this spell so much, it's pretty much invisible to your enemies, which means they can't dodge it. For the Wondrous Physic, I highly recommend using the Magic Shrouding Crack tier, which is going to temporarily boost magic attacks, along with the Stone Barb Crack tier, which temporarily makes stance break easier. This is going to be great with the Transient Moonlight skill. The last build on our list is the Sorcerer Build. Spellcasting is going to be your primary way of damaging your enemies, and trust me, it's going to do a lot of damage. With the right talismans and spells, you are going to see a drastic increase in your spell damage. You're going to be doing so much damage with your spells that your enemies are never going to stand a chance, and most of the time, they won't even be able to hit you. Sometimes the best defense is an even better offense, and that's definitely the case with the Sorcerer build. Spells are very strong in Elden Ring, and the best thing about this build, you are utilizing all of them to their full potential. Any spell that you use on this build is going to annihilate your enemy. Since I am completely out of larval tiers, I can't show you exactly what your attributes would look like at different level brackets like we did previously in the video, but I can definitely guide you guys in the right direction. So as you can see, I'm level 250. The main 3 attributes on this build are Vigor, Mind, and Intelligence. You want to make sure you prioritize these 3 attributes as much as you possibly can. Obviously, your HP is going to be very important. The more Mind you have, the more focus points you have, which means you can cast more spells. For your main weapon, I recommend using any weapon that scales with Intelligence. The higher the Intelligence scaling, the better the weapon choice. My weapon of choice was the Wing of Astal, easily one of the best mage weapons in the game. Nebula Ash of War does so much damage, and it's so easy to spam on your target. Your melee weapon is honestly just there as a backup because most of your damage is going to be coming from your spells, and my glintstone staff of choice is Lusat's glintstone staff, plus 10, fully maxed out, S tier intelligence scaling. You can see here our sorcery scaling is 430. What's great about this staff overall, it enhances the power of all sorceries. For the apparel, I'm using the Alberic's outfit. So I have the Alberic's hat, the robe, the bracers, and the trousers. This is definitely one of the coolest outfits in the game, especially for an intelligence build. The talismans on the build are extremely important if you want to do as much damage as possible. Radagon's icon is going to shorten our spellcasting time, which is going to bring us to the cap for spellcasting in regards to dexterity, because once you hit 75 dexterity, that is the fastest spellcasting speed in the game. We are currently at 35, and this talisman is equivalent to 30 extra dexterity on the build. We are also using the Graven School talisman, which is going to raise the potency of our sorceries. Obviously, if you have the Mass Graven School talisman, use that one instead. I'll have to use this one for now until I can get the better one. We're also using the Green Turtle talisman, which is going to raise our stamina recovery speed, and the Ritual Sword talisman, which raises our attack power when HP is at maximum. This talisman is really good because as long as you have full HP, your spells are going to do more damage. We are going to be using 1 incantation on this build, which means you will need a seal. We are taking advantage of Golden Vow, which is going to increase our offense and defense simultaneously, and yes, this is going to give us more magic damage. Which brings us to our first spell, Terra Magica. As long as you stay in the sphere below, your magic damage is going to increase by 35%. We are using the Comet as our main range spell. This spell does so much damage, and it only takes a couple of shots to kill your target. The next spell is Comet AZUR, your strongest spell on the build. If you time this correctly, you can pretty much one-phase every single boss in the game. So really what you have to do is you have to cast Terra Magica. You have to drink your Wondrous Physic, which contains the Cerulean Hidden Tear and the Magic Shrouding Cracked Tear. And from there, you can pretty much spam this attack and completely destroy every enemy in the game. I also recommend using the Night Comet for enemies that like to dodge your regular Comet spell. Carrion Greatsword, obviously one of the best carrion spells, and Adula's Moonblade are amazing spells for this build. Like I mentioned, for your Wondrous Physic mix, I recommend using the Magic Shrouding Cracked Tear and the Cerulean Hidden Tear. This is going to temporarily boost magic attacks and eliminate all FP consumption, making this perfect for Comet AZUR. Well, there you have it, guys. These are the top 3 intelligence builds to use in Elden Ring. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video in any way, shape, or form, be sure to leave a thumbs up. I would appreciate it a lot. Also, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel to see more videos just like this one. Thank you guys so much. I'm out. Peace.